friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate and today we're going to be doing a booktube newbie tag. Obviously I've had my channel for a while, I've been talking about books on my channel for a while, but I feel that now I have a fair few of you joining me for book talks essentially, that it's an appropriate time for me to do this booktube newbie tag. This video was actually inspired by Olive's Book Nook. I will leave her channel in the description box below. But her video basically goes through a bunch of questions about some of her favorite books and what inspired her as a reader. And I thought I would follow the same format and the same questions and just have a very easy, relaxed book chat. As you can hear, I'm a little bit sick, so we're just going to take it very, very relaxed, very demure, very mindful. We're going to drink some tea and talk about some books. So the first question is, what are the books that got you into reading? And I obviously have to talk about the Harry Potter books. So I read the first 4 Harry Potter books when they came out. They were actually the first kind of real books that I read as a child. I did not read really when I was a kid, but these books and the world and the excitement obviously just got me so into reading and into this kind of genre of fantasy. And I looked for books similar to these once I had finished them, and I jumped straight in after reading the 4 first Harry Potter books. I jumped straight into reading Lord of the Rings when I was a kid. This took me, I think, basically a year to read all of it. This is my original copy, and I really don't like that it's the film adaptation cover of the book, but I absolutely cannot bear to part with it, even though it is so horrendously bent and used, but I think it's too sentimental for me to get rid of, so I will hold on to this. But these books were essentially the books that got me into reading. What book genres do you read the most? And I've got 2 books here that I'll talk about, which kind of encapsulates my reading style. So the first one is a recent purchase. This is Boulder by Eva Baltazar, and this would encapsulate my sort of love for literary fiction. I am such a literary fiction reader, and I find that it is very, very difficult to do literary fiction these days. There are so many books on the market that I think come close to it, but I have heard nothing but great things about Boulder, and I am very, very excited to read it. My friend Anne just read it and she was just absolutely enthralled by it. But I also chose this book as an example because it is a translated book, and I absolutely love anything that is in translation. I think it is just something so phenomenal to get exposure to different cultures and different languages. And so I chose that book because it encapsulates that idea of literary fiction as well as translation. The other book that I picked up is A Ghost in the Throat by Doreen Ngofria. This is an Irish author, an Irish book. I absolutely love this book. I recommend this book to so many people. But the reason I picked up this book, apart from it being an Irish author and being about Irish literature, it's actually from a small press. So I really, really love supporting small presses or small publishing houses. And this is from Tramp Press, which I talk about quite often. And so that's what I really like to do, is try and support and look for those hidden gems in small publishing houses or small presses. The next question is, what book genres do you read the least? And I picked out 2 books here, but essentially it comes down to thrillers or crime novels. I am just not a very big crime or thriller reader. I find I don't find the genre particularly exciting for me. I have read 2 books that are in that genre, which I actually really enjoyed. This is Tana French's The Witch Elm, and I was recommended this book by a friend of mine, Simone, and I actually really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it right up until the end, which is exactly the same thing I'm going to say about The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and I know that this is a cult favorite and people love this book, and I loved it too. And the same issue that I had with this one as I had with this one is essentially that I feel like once you find out who the murderer is, that's where the book should end. But both books kind of had a couple of chapters after them that were like trying to resolve a whole lot of the, I suppose, loose ends of the story. And I feel like those could have been looped into the story more. I feel like essentially, and I am a bit fussy with endings of books, but I actually feel like essentially at the end of the day, I struggle with the endings of these books rather than the main section of them. But happy for any recommendations if you guys feel like I have not given the thriller or crime novel a good go. What is the book you tell everyone is your favorite? I just can't answer this question. I have far too many favorites to talk about. I don't think I have one singular favorite. I have a lot of favorites, and some of those are in this pile here, so I don't think I can actually answer that question. What is a book that you have reread the most? That is quite easy, and it is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is one of my very, very special copies of it. This is the Penguin Drop Caps collection that I often show here on my channel. I just love these copies of the books, and I just love Pride and Prejudice. I know it's probably very stereotypical, but as a novel, as a classic, Austen is just incredible, and I love Pride and Prejudice. It's not my favorite Austen by far, but it is the one that I find is the easiest to read. So I love picking up Pride and Prejudice whenever I'm in a bit of a reading slump or I just want something easy to reread. And I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And I will probably continue to reread this book consistently. I just love it. What is a book that everyone else loved and you didn't? I don't actually have a copy of this book, so I'll put it up somewhere here, but it is The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kinslova. I don't know what it is about this book. It's really put me off her as an author as well. I really want to read like Damon Copperhead, but I just can't bring myself to read it because The Poisonwood Bible was so awful for me. I don't know what it was about that book. I just think like she absolutely hacked the whole representation of Africa, and it just made me really angry and really upset. And so I don't know, I just really hated that book. That is definitely a book that, and I know so many people love that book. I could not get on board with it. Book that definitely deserved the hype. I think I'm going to, yes, I brought Solenoid out. A couple of people who've watched my channel before will know that I've spoken about Solenoid before. This has been a really phenomenal read for me this time. I picked this book up because it was shortlisted for the Dublin Literary Awards, and as soon as I started reading it, I knew that this book was going to be the winner. It is definitely not a book for everyone. I'll just preface it there. It's very difficult to read because there's no sort of defined plot line, but the way that this book is written, the fact that it's in translation as well, is just mind-blowing. But the way that this book is written, the way that it makes you question your views, the way that you look at yourself after reading this book, it is just truly, truly phenomenal. And it's a long book, but I have not stopped thinking about this book. I just think it's absolutely incredible. And it definitely lived up to the hype that was going around the international book community at this time. A book that you read the fastest. Okay, I definitely couldn't pin this down, but one of the books that I wanted to actually highlight here, because I read this book much faster than I thought that I would. This is The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. This book I had put on my TBR this year as like one of my massively big reads because it's over 1,000 pages. And I read and I listened to this book because it's so big. And I was so surprised by how quickly I got through this book. I was listening to the audiobook while I was cleaning, while I was doing anything, and I swear one night I cleaned the entire house just because I wanted to continue listening to this audiobook. The intrigue, the mystery, the mysticism, the storyline, the characters, everything about this book was so engaging and so thrilling, and I loved every single part of it that I just wanted to keep reading it the whole time. And the great thing about this book is that I believe the way that it works is that the first chapter is like the longest, and then the chapters get slowly shorter and shorter and shorter. So your first slog, I suppose, of this book is getting through that first chapter because it introduces all of the characters, but it is so fascinating, and I just think she did a marvelous job with this book. So this is definitely a book that I read far quicker than I thought that I would. Is it the book that I've read the fastest? Probably not. I've definitely read books in like a couple of hours. Let's see. A book you think deserves more hype. I know I'm going to repeat myself here, but A Ghost in the Throat. So many people should read this book. It is so brilliant, and I don't think a lot of people know about it or have heard about it or anything like that, but every single person that I've recommended this book to has loved it, and I wish that it had more hype than it has because it is truly a phenomenal book. Let's see. A book you usually recommend. Again, I don't have this book because I have loaned it to someone and I can't remember who I've loaned it to. I have a feeling I've lost this book, but anyway, the book that I will always recommend is Stoner by John Williams. This book changed my life. I cannot exaggerate how incredible this book is and how much it has meant to me. And it seems like such a dull story, but it just takes you in. And especially for literary lovers, I think they would really love this book. So if you love reading, this is definitely a book for you. And if you're a literary student, even more so, I think it's just such a phenomenal book. And it's one of those books that I wish I could reread again for the first time. The impact of it is so profound. A book you thought you would hate. Okay, again, maybe a bit controversial, but I put off reading this book for so long because I loved Normal People, and I thought to myself, well, nothing can live up to that. And so many people had such horrible things to say about Sally Rooney in her height, and I just thought, oh, I'm missing something, and maybe me reading this book will... I desperately thought that I would not like this book as much as I did. Actually, I think it's better than Normal People, and I loved this book. I loved this book so much. I think about this book so often, and not because of the love stories that happen in this book, but because of the letters between the two friends. I just think this book is so beautiful. It's so well written. That dynamic of friendship between the two girls, Alice and Eileen, is just phenomenal. And I loved this book so much. I thought I was going to hate it. I thought I wasn't going to enjoy it in the slightest. I thought it wasn't going to top Normal People. It absolutely did, and I'm so glad that I read it. And I will be reading her new one that comes out, I think it comes out this month, and I'm so excited. A book that made you cry. So many books have made me cry, but The Dictionary of Lost Words made me cry so much this year. I think I cried 3 times during this book. Not necessarily because it was sad all the time, although it is a very, very sad novel, but it actually was kind of like happy crying a lot of the time. It's just such a gorgeous story. Very easy to read, and I just love that Pip Williams has also done a lot in terms of her research. This is obviously set in a very particular historical period where the Oxford Dictionary is being pulled together for the first time. And Williams really did a fantastic job on the historical research that went into this book, but also just the character of Esme is so wonderful, and it tackles so many contemporary issues that I think it was just overall very, very well done, and I loved this book, and I did cry in it 3 times. A book you wish you could read again, Stoner. I wish I could read Stoner again. I think I brought other books to talk about. Yeah, this is the book. Stoner, I wish I could read again, but also Tomb of Sand by Jintajli Shri. This book I read 2 years ago, and I still think about this book. The language that is used in this book, the atmosphere that it creates is so powerful, so inspirational, so wonderful. And the fact that it, again, is a translated book, it won the International Booker, I think in 2023 or 2022, I can't remember, I think it was 2022, it won the International Booker Prize. It is about a elderly Indian woman who reflects on her time during partition, and it is so profound. I just think that this is the kind of book that everyone should read in their lifetime to see the impact of history across generations. I just think it was such a phenomenal book, and I wish that I could reread it again because the reading journey was incredible. The book that has your favorite characters. The book that has your favorite characters is probably any of the Austen books. I know I'm holding up Pride and Prejudice here, but any of the Austen books will have my favorite characters. I love Mrs. Bennet as a character. I just think she's so ridiculous, and I would love to meet her in person. And I would love to meet characters like Mr. Bingley or Colonel Brandon in Sense and Sensibility. I would love to meet, is it Catherine in Northanger Abbey? I can't remember, but there's so many characters in the Austen novels that I would love to meet in person, just because I think that would be so great. So definitely any of the Austen books will have some of my favorite characters in them. A world you wish you could live in is definitely Harry Potter. No question about it. If I could go to Hogwarts, I think I would be the happiest person in the world. I know I'm really I'm in my 30s. I shouldn't be this obsessed with Harry Potter. I am. I'm sorry. You know what? I don't even care. This is something that I'm still very, very much obsessed with. A book that could cure a reading slump. I brought one of these. So again, possibly slightly controversial, but anything by Claire Keegan I think will cure you of a reading slump. The way that she writes about history is so brilliant. The fact that the contextual elements or the historically contextual elements that she writes about are so peripheral, but so prominent in her narration, and the characters that kind of fit into her narration are so seamless. And I just find her writing to be absolutely incredible. And the fact that they are generally quite slim, which would mean that you could get back into reading really, really quickly. It's not a heavy lift. And I think anything by Claire Keegan would be my recommendation for getting out of a reading slump. A book that everyone should read, I want to say all of them. Honestly, to say all of them. But I think a book that everyone should read, I'm going to say Stoner. I think everyone should read Stoner. Everyone will like Stoner in some way, shape, and form. I think if you are listening to this channel, you like reading, this is definitely a book that you should read. A book that would make a great movie, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. This book, with its elderly woman protagonist and the mystery elements, the sort of obscure cabins in which, the obscure cabin in which she lives in the mountains, the bizarre sort of environmental factors that come into this book, the murder mystery element of this book, as well as like the overlap with Wordsworth and all that. I just thought that this book would be so atmospheric as a film, and I would watch that film. I know they've made it into a play, and I really, really, really wanted to go and see the play, but they didn't. It was being held in London. I really wanted to go and see it, and I didn't end up being in London around the time that it was being shown, and they haven't recorded it as far as I know, but I think this would be such a phenomenal movie to watch, and I would watch that movie in an instant. A book you wish everyone would give a shot. So I think everyone should give the classics a go in one way, shape, and form. And I think the best way to dive into the classics is to read something like Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This book I probably have reread as much as I've read Austen's book. I just loved Wuthering Heights. I think it's got a little bit of everything. If you're looking for a book that is obviously very classically written, it's beautifully written, the narration in here is really, really well done. It's got intrigue, it's got mystery, a little bit of murder in there. There's quite a deep romance, obviously, between Cathy and Heathcliff. There's ghosts, there's all kinds of things in here, and I just think that this book is so well-rounded and so brilliant for a reason. And I think if anyone wanted to get into literary fiction or classical reading, that Wuthering Heights is the book that I would recommend. And then finally, a book that I'll never forget, and also one that I cried in this year, is Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. I had such a hard time with Hardy when I read Tess of the D'Urbervilles. That book absolutely destroyed me. Hardy loves to break your heart with his novels, and Jude the Obscure for me was heartbreaking, but just so incredible. And for the life of me, I will never ever forget reading this book for the first time, the experience that I had reading this book, and I can't wait to reread it. I can't wait to reread it. It's got settings that are similar to that of Oxford. It's obvious it's based on Oxford, even though it doesn't say it's Oxford. And the way that book was so ahead of its time for Hardy is just incredible. I love that book, and I'll never, ever, ever forget that book. I think that's everything. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've maybe gotten some inspiration for books to read, and I'll definitely see you in the next one. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great day.